Welcome back. The Week in Review continues. So 1 year ago, South Africa's political landscape changed dramatically with the formation of the Government of National Unity, an ambitious 10-party coalition crafted in the wake of a tight election result, promising stability, cooperation and progress. While the GNU was heralded by some as a new chapter for inclusive governance, but 12 months later, of course, questions are still looming at large, and despite a packed cabinet of ministers, deputies as well, no performance agreements have been signed. Accountability also remains murky, the public still waiting for the real dividends of unity. But President Cyril Ramaphosa has insisted that the work of government continues uninterrupted. But in the absence of signed contracts and clear metrics, how do we really measure the performance and also its success to date? Has the GNU truly lived up to its early promises? Well, to weigh in, we're going to be reflecting on this pivotal year, what also lies ahead. For that conversation, we're joined by Professor Tefo, a leading political thinker who has reimagined positively about the GNU's potential. Also, we're going to be joined by Matthew George of ActionSA and Khani Hendricks, of course, from Jama-ah. A very good afternoon to all three of you, and thank you for joining us. I know as we just, get Professor Tefo as well as, some of the other guests, Matthew George as well on the line. I believe Khani Hendricks, you're on the line. So perhaps we could start a conversation by just looking at the mandate, having, your party stepped into the GNU. And I wonder, with, the mandate being to serve the public at large, looking back, are you convinced that this was the best decision for this democratic project of South Africa? Mr. Hendricks, if you can hear me, I'm going to start with you on that conversation.
I can hear you. So the question is directed at me.
Yes.
As you know, that Jama-ah was one of the last political parties to join the GNU, in fact, 1 hour before the deadline. So we had approaches by 5 delegations of the African National Congress, and we eventually decided to apply to join the GNU because Jama-ah was looking forward to a patriotic front. And the patriotic front would have consisted of political parties involved in the liberation struggle. You remember in 1994, there were some of the political parties involved in the liberation struggle, like the PAC and AZAPU and Kibla leaders, that decided, for example, not to be part of government. In fact, they went so far as to tell people not to register to vote. And the reason was that the coalition established at that time was seen as an obstacle to form a patriotic alliance consisting of political parties with deep roots in the liberation struggle. But Jama-ah decided that this would be a stepping stone to eventually have a patriotic front. So there are parties now in the GNU who do not embrace the principles of the liberation struggle. And Jama-ah hoped that them being part of parties who were involved, that they would be influenced to change their ways. Okay. But it looks as if we're not succeeding.
Well, and thank you for those opening remarks, Mr. Hendricks, because we actually want to delve in a little bit further, even just looking at the possibilities and probabilities that lie ahead. Let me just leave that conversation there for now. Please don't go anywhere. We're going to continue. In fact, it's just the top of the hour. I want to recap those headlines very quickly. Welcome if you've just tuned in. Of course, we're in the second hour of the show. Well, a very good afternoon. Just after those headlines, we're just going to continue with one of our top discussions, of course, we had a few moments ago, because as we continue to reflect, 1 year ago, South Africa's political landscape changed dramatically with the formation of the Government of National Unity, an ambitious 10-party coalition crafted. This was in the wake of a tight election result, promising stability, cooperation, progress. The GNU, it was heralded by some as a new chapter for inclusive governance. But 12 months later, questions are looming large, and despite a packed cabinet of ministers and deputies, no performance agreements have been signed. Accountability also remains murky, and the public still waiting for the real dividends of the unity. President Ramaphosa has insisted that the work of government, it continues uninterrupted. But in the absence of signed contract, clear metrics, how do we measure the performance? And has the GNU truly lived up to its early promises? Well, joining us now perhaps to reflect on this pivotal year and what lies ahead, I believe all our guests on the line now. Professor Lesiba Tefo, a leading political thinker who has remained positive about the GNU's potential. He joins us. We're also going to be joined by some of the GNU political parties, Alan Beasley of ActionSA and Mr. Hanif Hendricks of Jama-ah and Michael Bagram of the DA. Well, a very good afternoon to all four of you, and thank you. Thank you for your time. Earlier on, we obviously heard from Hanif Hendricks, and he was just speaking to the decision, in relation to the public service mandate and the democratic project of South Africa. So, Prof, if you can hear me, good afternoon. Thank you for your time. I'm going to continue now, starting with you. I want us to take a step back and look at this in context because, I remember last year being, at the Results Center, and we were assessing possibilities and probabilities, and there were last-minute trading. Mr. Hendricks spoke about how 1 hour before the formation of the Government of National Unity eventually, was announced, they came on board. And if we're looking at, the expectations that you had, the potential as well to stabilize the country and promote collaboration, what are we witnessing 12 months later?
Yeah, the tragedy of Africa, not necessarily of South Africa, a plethora of political parties whose value and consequence I hardly see. Safe to say, this is typical of Africa. It's all about the self and not the other. A small country like us, right, having over 300 political parties, there isn't much you can achieve. I hear my colleagues there, panelists, Hendrik saying something, including the Patriotic Front. And then I hope he's aware that on Sunday, there is another one that is being launched, the United Democratic Front, UDF of old. I don't see any value in all those. I don't. Precisely because it is the source of conflict that leads to failure to have a few committed parties or individuals. Why is it that in the successful democracies of the world, at most they have 3, but in Africa or South Africa, how many do you have? Let me close it there. There is a point you made, performance agreement. What do we really mean by that? I mean, you cannot introduce a performance agreement when you have not appointed people on merit. Meritocracy and not kleptocracy or cadre deployment. If that was the criteria, then I would say you can begin to talk to me about performance agreement. I mean, the very people you want to engage in this regard, they don't know what it means. And some of the people who must implement the performance agreement, they themselves, they don't know what it means. Come on, there's too much talk, and we are holding to the past. I'm one of those who said, in the GNU, I believe. Even now, I believe. But South Africans must look themselves in the eye and say, it cannot be. Okay, let me make the last point because I think I'm out of here now.
Sure.
The dialogue. 12 months ago, I wrote in this regard. I was in favor of the dialogue. Later on, 2 months or 3 months later, I revised my thoughts. I said, I am no longer sure. And I heard in Dr. Kaas, perhaps at one level, I hear what he said. You can talk and talk and talk, but you have got the National Development Plan. 90% of the things that are going to be agreed upon are already contained there. 90%, I can tell you that much. Do we really, for how long are we going to keep talking and not implementing? Let me tell you the things that you know, by the way, Lisa, that I've been campaigning on. 1, you are not going to win, never mind how much you talk, if you don't deal with the question of migration. Number 2, if you don't change the Electoral Act of South Africa, that one day people queue and elect their leadership, forget about it. Gatekeeping, whatever name you give it. Number 3, as long as you have BEE, affirmative action, you are headed nowhere. Number 4 is cadre deployment. As long as you have a head of state who's still prepared to go to court to defend cadre deployment, which has brought down the ANC and brought down this country. Keep talking, my sister. To keep talking, people of my land, but you are headed nowhere. You are going to have that report, right? Already the budget is about R1 billion. What are you going to do with the report? It's not going to be implemented. How many reports, commission's reports that we have that are not being implemented? Keep talking, people of my land. But we know, I'm giving you 4 things. You don't need a national dialogue. Just committed individuals. It is the human factor that brought South Africa to its knees in the past 31 years. The question lastly is, Mbeki says to me, let's define the South Africa we want in this dialogue. I say, you're wrong. The question was, it was defined between 1990 and 1994, and we culminated with CODESA and an aspirational document we call a constitution. It's a guide, right? And in there, it says very clearly, a non-racial, democratic, non-racial, non-sexy, democratic South Africa, underpinned by the following values: reconciliation, nation building, and social cohesion. Do you still want to have a vision? A vision, another one, 2040 vision. Why did we fail in the past 31 years? And what is it that we're going to do to redress or address the failures? Thank you, colleagues and people of my land.
Thank you.
South Africa, too many political parties. You are headed nowhere. You are headed nowhere.
Certainly highlighting that important point of the fragmentation amongst the opposition and that pie obviously getting bigger, but we're looking at tangible change. I wonder, Prof, because we do have, and I know your line is unstable with, all these parties, all the priorities that have been put forth and the policies. Is there a risk of policy paralysis, but even just turf wars when it comes to parties seeking to assert themselves in Parliament? Again, to your point about going nowhere slowly.
Yeah, certainly. I wish one day they could sit down and find, some of these parties really are in codes, ANC leagues. They have nothing to, they're differing on with the ANC. It's about personalities, it's about access to state resources, right? You cannot have over 300 political parties in a small country like us with a small economy like us, and still hope that you can get it right. And people must at least accept we are not the only country to have been colonized or to have been under slavery or to have been under apartheid. But many people accepted and put that at the back and looked at where they are and fashioned a better tomorrow. South Africa is beholden too much to the past. And I'm not one of those who would want to look at another group and call it my enemies, the colonizers, the settlers. I've gone beyond that. I'm guided by the 3 values that underpin the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa: reconciliation, nation building, and social cohesion. Unless we work together, black and white will perish together as fools.
Well, Prof, thank you. Thank you for setting that context for us. I'm now going to bring some of the political parties under the GNU. Of course, we've got Matthew George from ActionSA, Michael Bagram from the DA, and Hanif Hendricks representing Jama-ah as well. Matthew, let me start with you. We've heard the sentiments being echoed by Prof Defo, and 12 months later, I wonder if we can look at your party, the specific priorities and policies that you were pushing for within the GNU, even just managing the differences when it comes to ideology, appeasing your constituency as well. Give us examples of ways in which you did manage to work together, but also gaps or tensions that may have arisen as well to date.
Yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners, and thank you for your viewers, and thank you for having me. Just to remind you that ActionSA is not part of the GNU.
Yes.
And we consider ourselves a rational, constructive, pragmatic opposition, so we're not part of the GNU. And I think it's quite key that the GNU has been a dismal failure at the moment. The key metrics has to be economic growth. When Table 1.0 was budgeted, economic growth was forecast at 1.99%. It's been revised down to 1.4%. The latest numbers for the first quarter is 0.1%. It's absolutely dismal, absolutely dismal. And if we can't get economic growth going in our country, we're never going to address unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And the latest job numbers, we lost 300,000 jobs in the first quarter, 5,000 jobs are being lost a day. So there's 5,000 people going home to tell their families that they've lost their jobs a day. It's dismal, and we've just seen it through the budget process. The GNU is at war with itself. They spend more time in court than sitting around a table and saying, how can we actually move this country forward? So extremely disappointing. And you actually talk about accountability. There's lack of accountability in the GNU. Now, we've got a bloated cabinet now. The cabinet's got bigger and bigger. It's costing more. Every minister and deputy minister spends more time flying overseas business class, living in luxury hotels, than doing the work. And it's simply unacceptable. And the problem is some of the parties that are part of opposition now are part of the gravy train, and everybody's just left quiet. And there's just simply a lack of accountability. I asked the Auditor General, what's the one thing that she would, and she said there has to be accountability. So until there's performance contracts, until the ministers and deputy ministers are held to account, the GNU is not going to move forward. And that is key. There has to be accountability. If ministers don't perform, they need to be fired. They say fish rots from a head, and our head is rotting from the cabinet and deputy ministers.
Yeah, well, Alan, thank you for those opening remarks, and also apologies for getting your title wrong there. I know that information obviously just got mixed up, and thank you for speaking to that, because I'm looking at why ActionSA decided not to join the GNU at large. And in terms of accountability, what do you plan to do going forward to ensure that you do hold these parties accountable from an opposition standpoint as well? How do you intend to collaborate perhaps on certain national priorities? Is that something that's also being considered at this point?
Definitely, as a pragmatic, rational, constructive opposition, if something makes sense, we will support it. If something doesn't make sense, we'll stand against it. And a key example is SARS. When I got into Parliament this term, I identified that SARS was seriously underfunded, and I collaborated with other political parties in our Standing Committee on Finance. We got SARS extra money, so it is possible for an opposition party to make a difference, and we're showing that. But in terms of accountability, we're asking every single minister and deputy minister their travel costs, and we've introduced a bill that is quite interesting that the DA previously introduced, but since they became part of the gravy train, they've let it lapse, and it's like cut the cabinet perks bill, and that's just going to shine a light on these huge expenses and accountability. And every time we get to ask a minister a question in Parliament, we say, ask them, have you signed a performance agreement? And the answer is no. So how can your services, your outcomes be measured if you don't have anything to measure against them? But we've got to go to economic growth, and economic growth is non-existent. So on that basis, they've all failed.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that, Alan. I'm going to bring Michael Bagram into the conversation. I can see, Michael, you are there, obviously representing the DA there. We've heard the sentiments from Prof. Therefore, of course, some of the, we've seen the ripple effects since the signing of GNU. ActionSA, not part of that, speaking to some of the concerns, particularly when it comes to performance agreements, the metrics as well, to hold political parties accountable in this GNU structure. I mean, you yourselves have your own priorities and policies that you're pushing for. We've seen some of the court action playing out, 12 months in. Tell us about, this arrangement to date, how it's faring for you, and really some of the criticisms, obviously, in view of what's transpired 12 months in.
Thank you, and thanks for having the Democratic Alliance on air. Look, I hear what the professor's saying, and I understand that you can't have a proliferation of little parties that actually make no difference whatsoever. And the GNU should actually have a cutoff of, say, 10%, and then push others out so we can go forward. But when you're talking about accountability and you're talking about performance, I can take you through every single one of our ministers, deputy ministers, our chairs. Every single person has been actually pulling their weight and making it happen. And go to Dr. Leon Schreiber, Minister Leon Schreiber of Home Affairs. They are pushing forward, and never have we seen in the last 30 years Home Affairs doing so well and creating jobs, and it's starting to happen. If you go to John Steenhuisen with agriculture, again, the agricultural project has increased multiple times with the export. So we're creating jobs there as well. Go to Dean McPherson of Public Works. Again, they've turned South Africa into a building site. So we are seeing things happening. I can go to Sibiwe Karubi, education. Again, we're seeing that happening over there as well. They're talking to the business community. They're making people come out of school fit for purpose and read for meaning. I can carry on and on. Solly Malatsi has improved communications and improving their ability to do business. Go to Deputy Minister Ashur Sarapen, who is unbelievable. Again, we're seeing reforms, we're seeing the things happening. I know what the Prof says, that we can't have things such as employment equity and we can't have cadre deployment. That we're working on, and we're going to court on that. It's not like we can't go to court. We will go to court, and we must get rid of cadre deployment and equity because it's not working. It's going backwards. So obviously it's a group of people who are put together, not entirely the same ideals, but we believe in Project South Africa. We must make it happen. I'm not so sure that the smaller parties in the GNU, they're adding nothing to the picture at all. But we need to move forward. We've got to be positive. We all live here. I can take you to the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, again, is now talking to the business community and making people, Dr. Mimi Gondwe is making the people talk to the business community so that we can put people out into the field who are then fit for purpose for business. You need that. We need to push up in the business community. And it's the same what we're seeing with Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield of Trade and Industry. And I can go through hundreds of them, but what I'm saying is that they are making a difference. And we need a government of national unity because there's no one party that can control the country. And we're seeing these coalitions happening all around the world. So I hear the professor, I respect what he's saying, but at the end of the day, we need to make this work, and we are making it work. I have a very positive feeling. I'm celebrating the 1 year of the GNU, and despite the problems, we're seeing it happen.
Well, we obviously, measuring the work to date. And thank you. I know there's a plethora of, discussion points that we can get into. But thank you for highlighting, from your party's vantage point, what really has been done and perhaps also what the roadmap looks forward going ahead. Because Mr. Hendricks, I need to wrap up with you weighing in. We're looking at appeasing one's constituency to the ministerial positions and the work of Parliament as well, but also just the democratic project of South Africa at large. And I wonder if you could weigh in on that. Also, just ensuring that the smaller parties have, equal representation when it comes to the decisions that had to be made, and so that they're not drowned out. And really, what are some of those inner workings and dynamics that are happening 12 months in that are of a concern or not at this point for you?
Look, smaller parties, like you call it, we have the same rights and privileges as everyone else in the cabinet clusters, which make recommendations to the cabinet, who then gets the president to make, in most cases, the final decisions affecting the people of South Africa. So we have processes in place to hold everyone accountable. We can see that the president doesn't hesitate to put ministers and deputy ministers on the red carpet and get them to please explain. We have an interministerial committees where we all work together. And at the moment, we have to complete documentation to evaluate the progress made in these interministerial committees. So there is oversight by the presidency to ensure that interministerial committees are working, that we're removing silos. The president has appointed presidential champions for the 52 districts. I've been appointed for Joburg. I'm going to rescue Joburg, not Helen Zille, for example. So yes, the opportunities for smaller parties in the Government of National Unity, in the Leaders Forum of the Government of National Unity are very exciting. We are bringing marginalized communities into government. We are giving them opportunities to serve on the political structures that the ministries have, something that has never
Sure.
happened before.
You
So,
can finish your point, Mr. Hendricks, as we wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to finish my point by stating that the government of national unity, that we've now, the Leaders Forum have decided to have an imbizo. I hope it's going to be under a tree, otherwise not a real imbizo, where the 10 leaders of the Leaders Forum are going to plot the way forward. We need to do more work on the dispute resolution, the mechanism. We need to make sure that political parties don't undermine Parliament, which the DA has tried to do, and the President has been very firm that you are not there to undo the laws that have been passed over the last 30 years. We can work together when it comes to new laws, but don't undermine the sixth parliament and the other parliaments during our 30 years of democracy, which is
Okay,
one
I
of
need to end there, Mr.
problems that will derail the GNU.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of you for joining us. Alan BC, of course, representing ActionSA, weighing in, not part of that GNU formation, criticizing what's been done to date. Some of the priorities, obviously, being questioned, given the implementation, the rate of accountability, but also challenges some of the GNU members there. Jama-ah, Khanif Hendricks, as well as Michael Bagram from the DA joining in the conversation, and then overall Professor Lisibet, therefore, they're weighing in on, the fragmentation of the opposition in South Africa, what this means for governance, decision-making, and of course implementation at large. Again, thank you to all of them. Still more questions and answers, and we're still managing and monitoring those developments 12 months in. But again, thank you to all of them for making time to be part of this discussion.